Hello and good day. My name is Mr. Cubes, and today I will be going over what the Draco Deos members brought for the tournament. And hello and welcome to the return of a series I used to do called Inside the Cube. This is episode 1 of season 2. So just to start off this segment, I'm just going to quickly go over what I'm going to be doing with this series going forward. I will be using this series as a way to update you on decks that I either find extremely interesting in terms of what they bring to the meta or just like their overall prospects in general, or I'll be using it as mainly a tool to convey what decks us at the Draco brought for various tournaments and for what reasons we brought them. So let's just jump right into it. First of all, I just want to talk quickly about the actual tournament itself. And the reason I want to talk about this is because it kind of cues into why we picked a lot of the decks that we picked. So the rulings for any given tournament, of course, impacts what decks you're bringing for this tournament. So, first of all, the rules for the tournament, for the people that don't know, was like you bring 3 decks. It's called Wild. You bring 3 decks of your choosing. They can be the same entire deck if you want to. You just have to submit 3 decks. You have to then play for the qualifiers under a time restraint of within like a time bank system of 12 minutes. So since you can bring any 3 decks and you can switch them in between matches as you like, you're not required to, for instance, say if you win, switch decks, or if you win, stay on the same deck. You can play whatever deck you want. This introduces a little bit of a mind game to the players, but ultimately it becomes what we like to call a coin flip matchup of do you guess correctly, yes or no. The reason it does this is because of the decks we're going to go into and how they affected the meta in terms of what decks we expected people to bring, which, just to go over them really quick, we expected people to be bringing blue-red. That was like our main thing. Blue, red, and green. When we talk about green at Draco, we mean the aggro green decks, because we thought that they were the best at the current time in the meta. So since we expected people to be bringing these decks, and we knew that those were most likely going to be people's 2 decks, there was one deck we weren't entirely sure of. So we had to kind of try and mostly guess from what, but it could be anything depending on player preference. So, now that we've just gone quickly over the rulings for the tournament, how this impacts our decision making is, for instance, we didn't want to be, because of the 12-minute time bank system, we didn't want to be playing extremely slow decks that had to, where you had to take a lot of time to think about your turns, because that didn't actually benefit you very much. It could actually be a detrimental factor, as in games where you sit and you get very pressured by the time because you don't have enough time to think about all your correct moves. So either you end up making mistakes or you just simply don't think about the correct play enough. So either you run out of time on your turn and then you run out of time in the at the end when you hit the time bank limit, or you simply don't take the time to make the correct moves all the time. So that was our main focus of what deck should we not bring. Luckily, because of the 12-minute time bank and how efficiently we thought we were playing most of our decks, we didn't think that any deck would really impact our decision making that much. We thought green Muras would be really hard to comprehend in this state, so we ended up deciding that for the green mirror, we didn't want to go with a slow deck. Simply because of how it would impact the game. So because green might take a lot of time to think about their plays because of Feed the Forest plays or correctly buffing and where do you move and where do you position and stuff like that, it became, well, if we're actually playing Rush, we don't expect to hit that limit anyway. Okay, let's just jump right into our first decks, or into our first deck as we go into. It's gonna be mono green. So when we brought mono green, we had the expressed goal of being the Rush green variant. I know. So when we wanted to bring green, we wanted to bring a green deck that had a lot of functionality in what it could do with the cards it had, while still being able to put out a lot of pressure very early. Like playing a Verduran Force on your opponent's face turn 3 or even turn 2 with Explorer on the draw or as player 2. You had a lot of ways of pressuring your opponent, but also because of Feed the Forest, you weren't really running out of options later into the game, because if you would run out of Faria like other decks would, like other aggressive decks. So when we built the deck for this specific version, we wanted to try and build it towards the Mira and against Blue-Red. As I said earlier, those were the decks that we expected people to bring the most. This is why we are running Willows, because they actually help us in a race scenario. They can be a target just for Feed the Forest if you need some like Faria quickly, or they're a target that doesn't die to all of Red's removal. Right, it's a harvester. Or not really a harvester, it's a creature that allows you to still pressure your opponent while offering utility in the form of it can harvest, it can actually be a pretty good threat. Like with an Oakling buff, like a 6/12? That's pretty scary. So yeah. Overall, the other cards are very self-explanatory, other than maybe Shrine. Shrine and Piper, I guess. Piper, effectively allowed us to play a game where we could play green versus green and just have it like be another Tiki that simply made our Verduran Force trade well with the opponents, while again being really good with Feed the Forest. Shrine allowed us to, again, allow our creatures to trade into the opponents, even if we had the smaller creature. If our opponent had a 10/10 Verduran Force and we had a 7/7, we could still smack our Verduran Force into his and trade our Verduran Force, but having it live and trade another creature, say, like a Freedom Fighter, to kill it. This wasn't very efficient trading, but because of how the green matchup works, it's effectively who has a creature in play, because then the other one can't really play creatures near it because they can't expect the opponent not to have any buffs. So again, we brought green because green in our testing had the better matchup as aggro green against blue-red, other than the other potential decks we could bring, while also having a decent matchup against the rest of the field that was like unaware decks that we weren't exactly sure if people were bringing or not. So, as green is the main focus of our tournament practice, it's the deck we expected most people to be running the most of, because it was, as we thought, the best deck. We expected it to be better better against blue-red than it actually turned out to be in practice for the tournament. This might have been because we expected people to be running a lot similar versions to our list, if not worse lists. Whereas people were a lot more greedy with their list, and it came down to Aurora's creations and a lot of Aurora's creations, and people evolving their blue-red list to not be as bad against the green list by including Ninja Toads and other cards, so they had better plays to play early. It wasn't that our green deck had a bad matchup against blue-red. We just expected more people to be playing green that actually ended up happening. So I as a leader of the team, I'm very happy that we brought the deck, even for my own qualification matches, that I ended up bringing green, because it helped a lot in terms of what safe deck can you play game one without getting smashed to some random aggressive deck, which blue-red had the tendency of doing if you happen to draw poorly. Anyways, we will go right from green. I will not be going over very details about these decks because I have very limited time. I kind of want to try and keep this under half an hour, and I have 3 decks to go over. Yeah. So, we have blue-red. Blue-red was a very interesting shell to play around with. We had a lot of fiddling around to do, and this is not the exact list that we brought. It varied a lot. Even the green list varied a lot from player to player, and their personal preference in the tech cards they brought. Some of us brought some Defender of Homelands as more gatherers, and others didn't bring Shifting Tides, and maybe some Bomb Slingers were added, more than the one is in, or it was taken out entirely. There's a lot of wiggle room with these lists because of how the list ended up like behaving, because there's so many great cards. But overall, the list was designed to just give us a more defensive option that we could like go into if our opponents happen to, say, play like a really slow deck that like grinded out blue-green, or sorry, that grounded out mono-green aggressive deck early. So like basically a tempo style deck that couldn't keep up late game, right? Which is going to be the third deck we're going to go over. So basically, we ended up with a lot of tech cards. We tested Obelisk to be really bad against green, and we didn't want to be like stuck if our opponent was playing Rush Green as the deck that we expected people to be bringing a lot. So we ended up cutting down to one Obelisk, or some even fewer. Some played two, like others played one, and some played none. It was a very like dependent. So basically, like the fluctuating cards in the list is Firestorm, Bomb Slinger, Creation, Ninja Toad, Fire Bombs, Flame Burst, Obelisk, Shifting Tides, even Unbound Evolution, like some number of those. So because the list is so fluctuating, it's hard for me to bring you an accurate like list of just say this is what all of us played, because it was so hard to describe what all of us are playing. But basically, the goal with the deck, as the obvious factor, is that you have the blue cards to deal with any big cards, and then you have all the red cards to deal with a bunch of small cards, right? Like Salamander and Gunshakers do a lot of work against small creatures, and then Unbound and Mirror Phantasms did a lot of work against, for instance, Vidurant Force. Turning Vidurant Force into a 7-drop, it was very relevant. Like making it a mag that would mostly guarantee you an insta win, and the worst case scenario is a 2-5 or a 7-5 5-7. Damn it. In Ogre Battler, which still was a downgrade in 2 attack, so it wasn't horrible. There's like a lot of leeway. You could also get Vampire, which is like 4 health. You'll get Battle Rager, which is 3 health, which is really good because it died to Salamander, and so on and so forth. So overall, the blue-red list varied a lot from player to player. Some played more Harvesters, some played more Blood Obelisk. It was entirely relative to the player's own personal preference. Okay, we're going to go over what some people might find a shocker as the last deck that we ended up bringing for the tournament, which is Blue-Green Fairies. Blue-Green Fairies was our counter to green. We expected a lot more people than actually ended up bringing green and playing it as their first deck. So we could pick Fairies into blue-green because that had an incredibly good matchup. So why Fairies is good against green is because they have because all the Fairies have charge 2 and flying. You have a lot more mobility against the green creatures that the green player doesn't have. Because you get to dictate combat, so your buffs are more relevant than the opponent's, because if even, your opponent had to preemptively buff, and if he started doing that, you had Unbound Evolution and Mirror Phantasm to get rid of his buffs and make you efficiently trading again. So basically, you had the tempo advantage against green. But Fairies were really bad, as a note, against blue-red. And we knew this going in. So, for us, it effectively, because of how the format, as I said at the start of the video, because of how the format was structured, it was very hard to correctly identify what your opponent was bringing all the time. So we ended up just bringing these 3 decks, like Fairies, Blue, Red, and Green. You could also have brought other decks like, say, Blue, Red, or Yellow, Red, Burn, which had an 80% win rate against Blue, Red, but it had a 10% win rate against green. And these were kind of the issues that we were facing, that a lot of the decks in the meta didn't really have very good matchups against most of the other decks, or it was very draw dependent, which also isn't very highly wanted in a tournament deck. The main shocker to people at the time might have been that we're playing Wisdoms over Lore Thieves. And this is basically because Wisdoms allow you to go double green, play Flower Silk Fairy, and still draw 2 cards to hopefully proc it. while also being an additional event in like for the deck, you can see that we're running 3/6 like Spell World's Shifting Tides, that's 6, Runaan's Command and Wisdoms, that's 12, and Elderwood Embrace, that's 15. So we're running an Unbound Evolution, so we're running 17 events, 13 creatures, which is a very small amount of creatures, but we wanted the event density to be very high, and because both Shifting Tide and Wisdom are effectively card draws drawing us into the creatures, that wasn't really an issue. And Spell World giving you creatures was also very relevant, because then it's effectively an event that's also creatures. Even though those creatures were sometimes very bad, you had a lot of Faeria left over after having played your Fairies and drawing some cards and just waiting to buff something. So getting, say, Gabriel Noble or Wavecraft Colossus, Mystic Beast, some of the bad blue cards were even still fine, because you just wanted something to spend your Faeria on. So there's a lot, you could talk about why not 3 Tika Caretakers, the 3 Mirror Phantasms, and you can do that with all the lists, and it's a lot about how we ended up testing and what we preferred. And this is not the final fairy list that all the players bought, and some players for the qualifiers, for instance, didn't bring fairies at all. They ended up just bringing green, blue, red, and a third deck of their choosing. This could be yellow control, aggro, could be slow green. It's entirely relative to the player's own preference. So the only 2 decks we were sure that we were bringing was, again, the mono green deck. This is not the final version. It is simply the version that best represented all the different things that we didn't happen, because they had announced it already, and having issues with the rulings and everything just before the tournament start wasn't very appealing. And there's the whole change in date for the finals, which didn't actually ran more Bomb Slingers. I didn't run Firestorms. Other didn't run Bomb Slingers and ran more Ninja Toads and didn't run Obelisks and ran Defenders. And it's a huge mess to try and bring all the lists together, because it's not really possible. So, overall, going over the tournament and our thoughts on it, at least my own and the general opinions of the team, more specific information for each subjective player, or each individual player, you would have to ask them personally. I can only give you a general estimation of the team's feelings. So, the team felt a little bit unsatisfied that the tournament ended up the way it did. We realized that the developers were under time restraints to try and make this tournament happen, because they had announced it already, and having issues with the rulings and everything just before the tournament start wasn't very appealing. And there's the whole change in date for the finals, which didn't actually end up being a huge difference for us as a team, but it ended up it could have mattered. And there's a lot of these small changes that just made it feel really bad. There's also the fact that because the time bank was changed from 12 minutes to 10 minutes back to 12 minutes, the one day of having 10 minutes on the horizon made us consider maybe not even running blue-red, because it would be too slow in some matchups, and then we were trying to scramble to find other decks, and some people didn't want to bring yellow control because that was also too slow, and then they changed it back, so we changed our opinions back, which set us back a day of testing and everything. The brackets didn't actually end up favoring us very well. We had both in 2 qualifiers, the team members faced off against each other very early. In the finals, Messine and Helios played in game 1. We expected King Dance to be the most a feared opponent in the finals, and Senody faced him in round 1. So overall, we were a little bit salty with the brackets, and we could have gotten better brackets, but hey, it's what happens. It's fine. Overall, we were happy to participate in the tournament. Of course, we would have liked to see better results on our part. This didn't happen, sadly. We will try and keep up with the tournament scene and play all the tournaments, especially the bigger tournaments, and we're really looking forward to them. I will be doing these episodes again after each big tournament, where we have put a lot of effort into testing and stuff. There was, for instance, yesterday, and I know I'm coming with this video very late. Sorry, I've had a lot of work to do, and when I've actually gotten home after work, I've been tired and then just procrastinated instead of actually doing the video. But yeah, for instance, yesterday there was the Solar Rumble, we had some players participate in that, mainly Cappuccino. I'm not going to start bringing you deck lists from that. First of all, it was like a one-off tournament, so the deck list is going to be like 3 or 4 pages or 3 or 4 screenshots. That's not like the main concerning issue, but it's just that we didn't really put any effort into that tournament. It was just for fun. So as soon as the big tournament hits and we've done a lot of effort, I will try and keep you updated with this series, and I will try and just in general find like interesting decks that I want to talk about, that I've maybe played, or other people like Cappuccino have played, or some other people I've played against or I've talked to have played very interesting decks, and then I'll try and upload them and talk about them if they actually do post good results. So yeah, if you want to catch more of us over at Draco Deus, I recommend that you check out Cappuccino's stream. It's on Twitch, it's Cappuccino. I stream very, very slightly on my own channel, which the name is shit. I will say it very slowly so you have a chance to get it. CHR I594 and F. That is my Twitch channel. I know it's a really bad name. I'm sorry. Anyways, I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any feedback for me, please send it my way. You can give it to me either in the Reddit thread, on the forum thread, or give it to me personally. I don't mind any of you contacting me on Discord. That's the best way to get a hold of any of us. So yeah. I thank you for watching. My name has been Mr. Cubes, and I hope you have a very good day.